In regard to the Inspector General, do you see that Inspector General position as relevant? Because his opinion carries weight with a lot of people, and yet this is the second time we've seen this year in the Strickland administration that his opinion and his findings have been rejected by the governor, by others in the administration. In this case, you're rejecting his findings here. So what do you make of the Inspector General position and the clout that he has in issuing findings and reports?
Well, I can't speak for the governor with respect to the prior report. And what I've said here is that I accept some of the findings. I mean, there are management findings and there are other findings with respect to perceptions of how I've acted and how my background might have led to a perception of union favoritism. And I will work on that. But it is to the charges of abuse of authority and attempt to strong arm, those I reject. The Inspector General is a mechanism within state government, and it's a worthwhile mechanism to make sure there's not wrongdoing, and it's a worthy process. But you have to agree that the outcome and the conclusions are worthy as well, and some of them are, but the most serious of the irresponsible acts and abuse of authority, I can't agree with those.
The insinuation has been made that you're in your position in order to appease unions, that the governor has sought that support from unions and the members, and that you're in your position to work out some sort of a better relationship than previously existed. Did you come into this position seeking to have a better relationship with the unions, and is that in any relation to elections and politics?
Well, I came into this position to help build schools. We've got 200 school projects going on right now, putting Ohioans to work. And I came in here to make sure that those schools and that building process was done effectively and efficiently and under budget and on schedule. That's the management role of this agency. To the extent to which unions or anyone else was pleased with my taking this position, I'm flattered. But I have a role to play here, and I have a job to do, and I think I've done that. The politics of it, the governor's on the ballot, and the governor will go out and attempt to talk to people and put his record out there. I'm not running for anything.
Do you see the unions as in any way having a greater degree of say than the general public would think they should in your department?
Well, what I've said is that how does that result in contracts? What results in contracts is a contractor that bids low among all other bidders. If I love unions to an absolute, I don't know how I change that, because the bidding goes on at the local level, and the low bidder is awarded the job. I can't affect who the low bidder is.
But the first example that jumps into my head to the contrary would be the Ohio Schools for the Blind and the Deaf. You can't affect that, and you did in choosing the project labor agreement.
Well, that's a different approach than the low bidder approach.
But in that situation, you were able to implement a project labor agreement that clearly the unions want, that the non-unions don't want.
In that instance, in consultation with the schools and in consultation with members of my commission, I entered into a project labor agreement for that project, yes.
Why did you do it unilaterally and not with public debate?
It wasn't unilateral. The law that set up the process, this would normally have been a project undertaken by the state architect's office. And this would have been and is a prevailing wage project. The law that essentially assigned the task of the School Facilities Commission said I must consult with the school superintendents before making decisions about the projects on that campus. I did consult with them. I told them that we were considering a project labor agreement, and told them what I thought the advantages of project labor agreement was, and asked their opinion. In that instance, they said, if you think that is the best way to create the project and the final school and academic buildings that gives us the best project at a fair price at the highest quality we can achieve, then they agreed with that. And I conferred with members of the School Facilities Commission as well. But in the end, the assignment of who made the decision was to the executive director of the School Facilities Commission.
Speaking to Brian Williams of ABC, he thought that there should have been a public dialogue, more so. So that's where that question comes from.
I understand.
And now in retrospect, having the bids come back and be so significantly over the estimates, do you disagree with your own decision back then, your own advice to the schools as far as the project labor agreement being their best course of action?
Well, those bids came in 40% over the estimate. We took it from a project that was supposed to come in hopefully at $28 million to about $40 million. I'll answer your question, but we are trying to understand what happened on the bidding of that project and why that bidding went that high.
You don't know right now?
We don't know. We've got some ideas. We've got a job to do to try to bring that project down to size and bring it down to budget, because there just is not more money as worthy as that project is. We've got to do it. We've got to do it at budget. I have yet to second guess my decision on the PLA. There are some issues about subcontractor participation, needing to have more participation of certain subcontractors in certain of the trades areas that we've got to work on. But you cannot conclude, based upon the bids, which were way over price, you cannot conclude there wasn't adequate competition yet. But we'll be looking at that.
Speaking of competition, how many bidders did you expect in comparison to what you actually got?
Well, we have a construction manager on the site, and I don't know what he expected. I mean, we know that certain of the general contractors that intended to bid did not bid because they saw their bids. Every bidder knew that their bid was going to be so significantly over the estimate that we would have to reject all bids, because the law says if the bids are 10% over the estimate, we have to reject. There were certain contractors who simply didn't put their bid in, so they didn't have to show any of their numbers. So we don't know. We don't know all the contractors that would have been in.
You've heard Brian Williams disagree with that, though, in saying that he felt that there's a chance that they could have come under the $28 million estimate if the PLA had not been in place, and that you would have had 3 times as many bidders if the PLA had not been a requirement?
Well, the PLA does not limit any bidder. Any contractor can bid. It requires them to enter into the project labor agreement and a union-only agreement for that project only.
But Williams' point, I'm sorry to cut you off, because Williams' point is that just to clarify so that I understand this better, is that the PLA requires the shops to hire union workers that are not their own. So when you say that it's open to anybody to bid upon, it does limit how they do that bidding.
They would come in. A contractor would bring his management and supervisory personnel to the site. He would probably be able to bring in certain key personnel. Some unions probably handle that differently than others, but it would probably require to hire union members outside of that contractor's normal work crew.
And so, where does that project stand right now? Is it delayed? Will it be built in the next year?
It stands right now with a lot of review. We have our architect and construction manager reviewing what are the relative costs of the components that are designed into the design. We have 2 large academic buildings and 16 separate dormitory, small houses, facilities to house students on that site. So we're looking at it. Stands right now. We are in review of the project and its design and its cost, so we can bring it down to budget.
Have you officially rejected the bids?
I have not officially rejected the bids, but there is no doubt that the bids need to be rejected because of their overestimate.
What are the chances of you considering rebidding it without the PLA requirement?
All options are open, but I need to understand a lot more about what this bidding circumstance is and the design circumstance as we go out next, and we hope to be able to do that in the next month or 2. All those decisions have to be made again. And
the fear is that this may affect the quality of the project if the PLA stays intact, and either one of 2 things will have to happen. The dollar amount will have to significantly jump to match what these estimates have been, what these bids have been, I should say, or that the project will have to be scaled dramatically back in order to fit within the $28 million price tag. Are you more likely to do one or the other?
I don't have any concerns about under a PLA that we'll get the quality. We're going to get the quality that we demand, or we're not going to put this project out to bid.
Right.
Any construction project has a lot of what you need and some of what you want. And we have got to make sure that as we build these schools and these academic facilities, everything that's needed to assist in the education of the blind and deaf students is there. There are issues of what they want and certain designs and exterior finishes and daylighting and landscaping. We've got to look at those things. We've got to say that our first priority here is making academic buildings that do what they need to do. And then we need to look at the icing on the cake and say, maybe we can't afford all that right now.
I know we're up against the clock. Two more quick questions.
Right.
Okay. First question would be, are you more likely to scale back or spend more?
We are likely to scale back. For example, this campus includes an academic building on the west side and an academic building on the east side. There have been in the plans $1 million for a bridge to cross over the ravine and join the two sides. I think under the circumstances, the bridge just simply isn't affordable in this first go, and we have to put those plans aside. There is additionally, as I say, 16 dormitory structures slated for each site. These schools serve students from across the state. They come in on Sunday. They leave usually on a Friday. So there is housing on the individual campuses for these students. I think we need to look at building what we need and attempting to stretch some existing dormitory facilities, maybe stretching their use for another couple of years until there's money and a capability of the legislature to appropriate more dollars and finish this project. But I think if we need to scale back in consultation with the schools and the superintendents, we will do that prudently and attempt not to affect the educational quality of those buildings.
And my last question for you is, the argument was made by Brian Williams that the PLA is inhibiting taxpayers from getting the greatest value for the dollars spent. And in that same sense, students at that school and everybody else involved with the school could get more bang for their dollar if the PLA was not in place. And so as you make that decision to either include the PLA in a rebidding or not include it, how are you going to make the decision? And how much will the union influence play a role in your decision?
Well, the decision will be what's in the best interest of the project. We have a project in the first instance. Typically a PLA is outside of prevailing wage requirements. This project came with prevailing wage requirements. So at this point, all I'm saying is that we need to look at all aspects. And at this point, I see a direct relationship between the quality that we want and the project labor agreement that's already in place. So I'm pledging nothing except we will look at it and make a judgment in the best interest of the project, which is what I did in the first instance.
And in regard to the union influence and their input against that argument that taxpayers could get more for their dollar, that the students could see a bigger campus perhaps?
Taxpayers are best served by the best quality project we can build for the money, and I believe the PLA did that.
Anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.